So the first two speakers we have are Amy Tribier and Serena Irani.
Good evening, Dr. Williams and members of the school board. My name is Amy Tribier, and I am the PTA president of Lucketts Elementary School, as well as mother to Gavin, a second grader at Lucketts, and Brady, I don't know if you can see him over here a little shorter, who will start kindergarten at Lucketts Elementary next fall. Tonight, we are gathered here to ask you to please vote yes twice tonight for Lucketts, once for a 3-classroom expansion, and once for a request for end fund balance to expedite the addition. By voting yes on both items tonight, you are affirming the value of equitable educational facilities by restoring both full-day kindergarten and a dedicated music and art room at our school. With your yes votes, you are ensuring Gavin will get beat up by his brother, but he will also get to experience drum circles and Orff ensembles in his new music room when he enters 4th grade in 2019, instead of having to wait until Brady, if you can imagine, this little guy is going to be a 5th grader in 2023, which would be the soonest possible funding if it were done through the CIP. Yeah. So, yeah, you'd be a 5th grader. You want a music room when you're in kindergarten? You do? Say it. Music room, please. Loves the attention.
I want to say, I'm going to be fast. I want to say, Mom.
Oh, you did? Good. I wanted to take a moment to thank the members of the Finance and Facilities Committee, as well as Mr. Kevin Lewis and his staff, for working extensively for 11 months on this plan, deliberating and researching to determine the best possible solution available. Thank you for hearing our concerns of our teachers, parents, and community members. Thank you for crafting a plan that will make it possible to add classroom space to handle our capacity issues while also keeping our community intact so that Mr. Brady here can go to the same school as his big brother next year. And thank you all for your dedication to our children's education. We hope you will vote yes on both action items for Lucketts this evening. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker up is Serena Irani, to be followed by Holly Fisher McTiernan.
Don't touch it. Sorry. Okay, you guys can stand up. Sorry. Good evening, Chairman Morris and members of the school board. I'm the proud mother of 3 students currently at Lucketts Elementary. And I would like to thank Mr. Marshall for taking the time to not only read and respond to my email yesterday, but also to follow up with some questions. So thank you, sir. I would also like to thank the members of the board who've worked with us to find a viable solution for Lucketts. In particular, I would like to say a special thank you to the members of the Finance and Facilities Committee, Chairman Morse, Ms. Sheridan, and Committee Chairman Mr. DeConnett, who voted unanimously in favor of tonight's action items on the agenda: a 3-room expansion for Lucketts Elementary and fund balance request for the project. It should be noted that the Finance and Facilities Committee made a point to exclude rezoning from its recommendation based on LCPS staff. After researching the issue, LCPS staff wrote, quote, "An abbreviated attendance zone process will not provide adequate enrollment relief at Lucketts Elementary School to accommodate universal full-day kindergarten and resolve other identified space issues." To be clear, what staff recognized and noted was that even by moving the approximate 50 students, who include my 3, in the proposed rezoning area to Waterford Elementary, it would not give Lucketts universal full-day kindergarten or a dedicated music and art room. But what rezoning would do for Lucketts is drop enrollment below 300. And as a result, Lucketts would lose 2.5 full-time staff members. It would raise the free and reduced lunch rate from somewhere near 20% to over 40%, making Lucketts perilously close to becoming a Title I school. It would put students on a bus to Waterford via Stumptown, which is the only alternative to Route 15 and the 36,000 cars that drive it daily. What rezoning won't do is bring universal full-day kindergarten to Lucketts. It won't give us a dedicated art and music room, leaving Lucketts to continue as the only school in Loudoun County without a dedicated art and music room.
Thank you.
So please vote. As you said, Chairman Morris, it's a win-win-win.
Next speaker is Ms. Holly Fisher McTiernan, to be followed by Karen Price.
Good evening. Thank you for the time that you've put in to debate the future of Lucketts Elementary. As a new Lucketts parent and a new Virginian, I have felt encouraged by board members who listen to community input and recognize that they are working for the future of all of our children. As a school board, you have approved millions of dollars for turf fields, press boxes, and most recently $4 million in change orders for Riverside High School without much resistance. Yet our community's request for less expensive, greater impact improvements, backed by diligent research by the Finance and Facilities Committee over the past 11 months, has been heavily challenged. And I found myself saying, I don't get it, but I do get it. I get it. It's a process, and here we are, hopefully at the end of the process. I hope you plan to vote yes for the proposed 3 classroom expansion that would give Lucketts enough room to once again provide full-day kindergarten and a dedicated space for art and music. As indicated by Mr. Lewis and his staff during Finance and Facilities committee meetings, proposed rezoning of approximately 50 kids would only reduce class sizes, not free up additional classrooms. Rooms are what Lucketts needs. Rooms will keep children from sitting on buses for 40 plus minutes in Route 15 traffic, where buses are involved in near misses every week. And I know that sounds crazy, but I see them and I report them, and it's terrifying. I don't want my kids on that road. I hope after 11 months of discussing this issue that you can see the many ways the Lucketts community would benefit by having these additional classrooms. Vote yes, please vote yes to invest in the future of Lucketts. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Price to be followed by Lauren O'Laughlin.
Hello again. This is amazing. I just want to say we only have 216 families at our school, and we have over probably 65 people over there. That's amazing. We have people from our community who do not have kids in our school because that is Lucketts, and we love Lucketts. So thank you so much for coming. This is amazing. I just wanted to take a minute to clarify some of the concerns from the last meeting before you guys vote. First one, enrollment numbers. We had 320 students last year. We have 306 today. Our decrease in numbers keeps popping up as a question amongst the board. Because we lost full-day kindergarten this year, we have 8 children who are now being bused to Balls Bluff. We also had several families who have chosen to leave our school to find full-day kindergarten elsewhere. But these are numbers on a piece of paper. I can tell you the impact of having 15 less students has not been felt. We may have less students in some of our classes, but we do not have any more classrooms. We still do not have a music and art room, proper learning spaces for our special ed and ELL students. The second concern has been rezoning, and as Serene said, this will drop our student population below 300. I'm not going to say all the things that she said. It's amazing to me that we are still talking about rezoning after 2 years of public comment. I know that you all remember the boundary process a couple years ago. It was about rezoning, and it was about us keeping our community together. It does not make sense for our school. It breaks my heart because we've worked so hard to solve that problem 2 years ago. This is not a solution. It is not solving a problem by making a new problem that we just fixed. This is taking away one thing from our children to give them something else. We are essentially taking away weekly library to give them a music classroom, and our children should be able to have both. Lastly, I want to take a minute to thank you for your time, for listening to us for the past year. It's crazy that it has been a year. We have been to about every school board meeting, every finance meeting for the last year to advocate for our children. Thank you for listening to us and allowing us to be a part of the process. At the last meeting, my 6-year-old daughter bravely stood before you, and she asked you to make her school better. Please think of her and her 305 schoolmates, and please vote yes for the addition to Lucketts, and please vote yes to request year-end funds to expedite this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lauren O'Laughlin to be followed by Alice Arnold.
Good evening. My name is Lauren O'Laughlin, and I'm the mother of a current kindergartner and a future Lucketts Lion. Since the last school board meeting, I've been trying to look at this from a variety of perspectives to see why some school board members might not be on board with voting yes to a 3-room addition to Lucketts. From a structural perspective, the Finance and Facilities Committee spent a significant amount of time creatively drafting a proposal that would efficiently and effectively provide a solution to the overcrowding. From a practical perspective, it makes sense to utilize the current infrastructure and couple the 3-room addition with an existing county plan project to improve water treatment facilities. Not only does this project utilize county end-of-year fund balance, but it guarantees students will have access to full-day kindergarten. With rezoning, full-day kindergarten is only a possibility. And with a 1-room addition, this would be a short-term solution with the new communities currently under construction in the area. From a human resource perspective, a 3-room addition would improve the working conditions at Lucketts, which research has tied to teacher retention and are powerful predictors of whether or not schools make AYP. It is challenging to retain highly qualified teachers when they're being subjected to less than ideal working conditions, conditions that are significantly better at almost every other school in the county. I think a teacher would choose a classroom over a cart every time. From a symbolic view, a yes vote on this would be aligned with your current mission, core beliefs, and strategic goals. Your school board predecessors identified such significant needs at Lucketts that they'd planned to build a brand new school. We're only asking for a desperately needed expansion to the current infrastructure. Thank you for your time and service to all of Loudoun County. Thank you.
Thank you. Alice Arnold to be followed by Deidre Price.
Good evening. My name is Alice Arnold, and I have two children at Lucketts Elementary, Jonas in third grade, named after a Weezer song, and Eleanor named after a Roosevelt in kindergarten. I'm here to request the school board vote yes for Lucketts to be placed back into the CIP for a 3-classroom addition, and to vote yes in requesting end-of-year fund balance to expedite construction for 2019. I'd like to thank the members of the Finance and Facilities Committee, Mr. Deaconette, Mrs. Sheridan, and Chair Morse, who made both of these recommendations. I'd also like to thank Superintendent Williams and LCPS staff, who have also recommended using end-of-year funds for this purpose. In fact, in 2015, LCPS set this precedent, perhaps before that, by requesting end-of-year fund balance for fixes at Potomac Falls High School, so we can be part of that as well. Having your support and encouraging, we hope the other members of the school board will join on. For the past year, we've been working for the Finance and Facility Committee to ensure that we're providing our students with a safe and adequate facility in which to learn. Equity amongst all schools is the responsibility of the school board, and our children deserve the same exemplary education and access to resources and technology as other children in LCPS. Tax dollars are needed in Lucketts the same as they are needed in Ashburn. Lucketts is the only school without dedicated art and music, and if we cannot request expedited funds, it won't be till 2023. That is a total of 8 years without Lucketts having art or music or full-day kindergarten. Unless we can request these expedited funds, my daughter, who's in kindergarten, will not step foot into an art room until middle school. This was the first room she wanted to see at orientation, and when I told her it didn't exist, she was heartbroken. In fact, we had to change our dining room into our art studio and watch YouTube videos to teach drawing because we don't know if we'll have art in the future. My son would like to be a percussionist. However, most of our musical equipment lays dormant on the storage. How can we expect these kids to flourish if we're denying them the tools in which to succeed? Please vote yes on both motions tonight for Lucketts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Deidre Price to be followed by Sean Julian.
Hi, my name is Deirdre Price. Before I begin, I just want to say that I really admire what everybody from Lucketts is here doing tonight. This is my good friend Megan Hilbert, and we're here as representatives of Rockridge Performing Arts.
Okay, so we just want to talk to you guys about our current show, The Addams Family. Over only an 8-week rehearsal process, students have worked rigorously to make the show the best it can be. In its first weekend, we have already sold over 1,000 tickets, and we still have 4 performances left. On our last performance, we will be seen by 2 adjudicators who will decide if we perform at the Leeds Center in Lincoln, Nebraska at Nationals. The after-school program at RRPA has the ability to seriously change kids' lives. It has given so many opportunities and confidence for students to shine, and everyone who steps into the program comes out with a new confidence and skills that they're going to ultimately take on for the rest of their lives. And yeah.
In addition to the Addams Family, Rockridge Performing Arts will be putting up 4 other productions this school year: Almost Maine, Aida, Mary Poppins, and Rosie. Rosie is a musical that I wrote. Our incredible theater teachers at Rockridge have completely supported me in my writing process over the past 3 years and are truly bringing my dreams to life by putting up this show I worked so hard to create. Without Rockridge Performing Arts, I would never have the skill set or the confidence to write a musical from scratch and have it performed at my school. The immense impact RRPA has had on my life is what motivated me to come here tonight and remind you all of the importance of arts in our schools, as all the people from Lucketts are advocating for. Rockridge Performing Arts and all of Rockridge High School, on behalf of Rockridge Performing Arts and all of Rockridge High School, I'd like to thank you for everything you do to make art education the best it can be, and I do believe that you will make the right decision in your votes for Lucketts tonight and support the arts. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Julian to be followed by Ron Malone.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. First off, I'd like to thank our Representative Eric DeKinnip for his continued community outreach and support of the Lucketts community. I have a 5-year-old daughter at Lucketts Kindergarten, and I have a 3-year-old that'll be joining in the coming years, and another daughter on the way. So my goal here is just to share a couple of things with you that I've learned over the previous couple of weeks. One, at the Board of Supervisors last week, we had the opportunity to hear Virginia Department of Transportation, the Northern Virginia Transit Authority, and the Transportation Planning Board talk about the conditions of 15. That's not getting any better for the foreseeable future, although they've approved a small phase 1 improvement that forces traffic through Waterford, so it gives us concerns with the rezoning, so that's really not a viable solution in our opinion. We have communities where we aren't able to get the learning and development that our children need and are yearning for. You've heard, we've seen the opportunity, what our children can do with the creativeness when given those opportunities for a music room, an art room, a computer lab. Right now, all of that equipment stored in the hallway. So if y'all haven't had a chance to check out Lucketts Elementary, there are storage bins that impede the flow of traffic throughout the school. That may be a fire concern as well, but our kids have to wait for that equipment to be brought in. 33% degradation of time that they get to, that robs them of the learning. So I'm sure we're the minority here in Northwest Loudoun, but I'm asking y'all to consider the expansion of Lucketts so that our kids have an equal opportunity to learn along with the rest of Loudoun County. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ron Malone to be followed by Jerry Hill.
Good evening. Thank you for taking time to hear our comments tonight. We really appreciate it. My name is Ron Malone. I have lived in Lucketts now for about 2.5 years. I have a proud parent of a second grader, Lucketts Lions, and then a kindergarten joining her next year. I'm here tonight to ask you guys to not rezone our students and tear the fabric that binds a community, but also vote yes to a 3-classroom expansion. Even though the rezoning may sound attractive and provide some temporary relief, I think ultimately the data has shown that it doesn't provide the relief and actually puts us in a worse position down the road. Removing teachers, eliminating libraries, those are all things that we are trying not to do. We're trying to foster our children, so we want to see them grow. Providing those environments to do that is very important to us and clearly our community. So thank you for your consideration. We do appreciate it. The next topic, I guess, is the Waterford School. This, you've heard earlier about the bus routes. There's a number of incidents that happen in that area. Pushing our kids out to a farther school only increases the likelihood of an accident. So please consider that when you consider this. It's important to us. I hope it's important to you. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jerry Hill to be followed by Danny Bailey.
I'm Jerry Hill, a parent of 3 children attending Lucketts Elementary, and thank you for allowing me to speak to you this evening. Lucketts Elementary isn't just overcrowded or in need of repair or one of the 5.5% of elementary schools not able to offer full-day kindergarten. We literally do not have the space for the classes required to instruct our children. 500-plus homes have been constructed this past decade without any investment to our facility. New subdivisions are being completed that will increase capacity of this antiquated facility by at least 33%. Today, music and art classes have no dedicated space, with nominal supplies being housed on carts, leading to 30% reduction in instruction time. Thousands of dollars of instruments and supplies are unable to be used. These, as well as computers, copiers, and printers, are all in hallways, obstructing exits stored in cafeterias or gymnasium. Our special education classrooms bearing walls are constructed of 4 double exterior doors with no climate control. Rezoning has been discussed as a solution. Since 2000, over 30-plus deaths have taken place on Route 15. Over 36,000 vehicles traverse this thoroughfare daily. Alternative routes such as Montresor, Stumptown Road, and Waterford are packed with commuters. This would increase the current commute for these 55-year-old students 5 years old, to school by an additional 40 to 60 minutes, putting an additional burden on the already strained educational transportation service. Lucketts Elementary would then be under the county-mandated 30-student count, decreasing staff by 2.5 FTEs. With our anticipated growth, as well as the fact that Lucketts is currently comprised of 19% ELL and 16% economically disadvantaged students, how is this a solution? Members of the board, please take action pertaining to this issue. Help our children and community. Request end-of-year funding from the Board of Supervisors to expedite the expansion of Lucketts Elementary. The children of Lucketts should be provided adequate facilities and an equitable education and should not be punished for not living in an affluent community. Thank you.
Danny Bailey to be followed by James Soliday.
Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? My name is Danny Bailey, and I'm here to request Lucketts Elementary be placed back on the CIP and for support for construction of 3 classroom additions to the elementary school. Last year, during boundary discussions, we were told our building capacity was 301, and I'm going to reiterate what was previously said. My daughter, 5 years old here, she just started kindergarten this year. I've got an 18-month-old that is going to be in kindergarten in several years. And when she was getting off the school bus this year, the teachers, the faculty at the school verbally were astounded about how many kids were coming off the bus. They were just surprised how many kids. And I was like, yep, that's just our neighborhood. There's many points to be made, and then they have been made. Closed off exits, false inflation of student capacity, classes being taught in the hallways or the cafeteria, lost music and art rooms. While other schools are receiving funding for 3-room classrooms, our students are being accommodated with less and less space. While other schools are introducing computer science immersion programs, giving students a half an hour of daily coding education, our students aren't receiving that same level of attention. Based on a report from the National Education Association, research shows the importance of a full-day kindergarten programs, yet those programs are not currently available in about 40% of kindergarten-aged children nationwide. As a result, many of our young learners begin first grade several steps behind their peers. Full-day kindergarten helps make sure that students build the strong base of learning they will need to succeed throughout life. Rezoning is not the answer. Rezoning to where? To the Blue Ridge District or another elementary school in the vicinity? The Catoctin District is forecasted to see sustained growth over the next 30 years from the Loudoun County demographics forecast. Sorry, I lost my place. Other areas, Dulles, Blue Ridge districts are currently seeing exponential growth, with those needs being met with construction of 3 classroom additions made to facilities to expand full-day kindergarten or other elementary needs. Those six three classroom expansions, Dulles District and Blue Ridge District, Lucketts hasn't seen any of those. Please give us the same opportunity you're giving the other students.
Thank you. James Soliday. Mr. Soliday is our final speaker for this evening.
Sir, as the final speaker, do I get an extra 2 minutes? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here as a parent of Luckett Elementary School students, but also as a parent of a Balls Bluff Elementary School student, as Karen Price mentioned. Driving down 15 with a daughter in a car seat is scary. Scary stuff. So we've heard about art and music classes. We've heard about traffic. We've heard about rezoning. But I'm here to tell you, let's do the right thing for the kids, please. But I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I want to be optimistic. We live in Loudoun County. It's consistently top 10 in growth, economics, and schools. We are 7.5 miles from Leesburg. It's a long time, though, 7.5 miles. Sometimes it takes an hour. But I can tell you, when my wife and I moved here 10 years ago, we lived in Ashburn. I'm a kid from Ohio. I used to bale hay. I saw cornfields and cattle. I'm like, I'm going. That's awesome. Guess what happened a couple years later? This niche little townhome in Brambleton, it was exploding. It was good. It's a good problem to solve. We have a good problem to solve on our hands, folks. Let's solve it, please. If we look at what's happening with carts and music classes and expansions, there's a water treatment facility thing that needs to be taken care of. There's a lot of good things that can happen out in Lucketts. I know we have the innovation and the support of this board to get it done. Leaving on a positive note, I know we can solve this problem. Thank the folks from Lucketts. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. On to item 8.02, Finance and Facilities Committee, Lucketts Elementary School Capacity. Mr. DeKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This one's a mouthful. I move that the Loudoun County School Board support constructing a 3-classroom addition at Lucketts Elementary School. The 3-classroom addition would be one of the 5 undesignated 3-classroom additions originally included in the fiscal year 2018 to fiscal year 2023 School Board amended capital improvement program budget. This project would be funded in fiscal year 2021 with completion in fiscal year 2023 by the start of the 2022-2023 school year. Further, should this project subsequently be endorsed and accelerated by the Loudoun County School Board by the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors in utilizing a portion of the county's 2017 year-end fund balance toward the classroom addition project, the Lucketts Elementary School would proceed as a separate project and no longer be considered one of the 5 undesignated 3-classroom additions originally included in the fiscal year 2018, fiscal year 2023 School Board adopted CIP.
Second.
There's a motion seconded by Ms. Sheridan. Mr. DeKennep.
I'll keep my comments short. We've worked on this for over a year. It's well thought out, well quantified, and from a long-term planning perspective, makes good common and fiscal sense. We had, as a committee, we considered this multiple options that were provided by staff and hashed this thing out pretty well. And with staff support and a unanimous vote in the Finance and Facilities Committee, we bring forward this recommendation to my colleagues on the school board. Thank you.
Additional comments? Ms. Rose.
My first question is for staff to just clarify, was, as you worked on this for the last 11 months, was it always the plan to be seeking fund balance to support this? Or when did that become part of the discussion?
No, ma'am. The fund balance becomes a topic every year at this time, just on the timing of how the fiscal year works. So that was added in the last few weeks. The discussions over time has been mostly through the committee and with staff on how to address the capacity issue.
Okay, so it was whether to do it, not how to do it, and the funding vehicle idea came at the end.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. In the past, when we've dealt with funding, with requests for funds from county fund balance, tell me if I'm correct, but it's typically not gone through a committee process. It's been something that has come from staff to the board as a whole with several items that reflect staff priorities that they see as a need that maybe board members might not know, and then other board member priorities that have been expressed. So it was it's something that the board itself would take these priorities, from these different places and then discuss and make a decision from. Is that, am I remembering that correctly from years past?
Mr. Chairman, point of order. The fund balance request is actually the next agenda item.
Okay.
If we can separate the two discussions.
Sure. Yeah, it's hard. It is hard on this one to not discuss them separately. So, okay. Then I will, on whether or not if we're talking about capacity now, so with the 3 classrooms and one being I guess a dedicated art and one being a dedicated music room, how is that going to deal with the numbers? How will that actually allow for full-day kindergarten or handle what is projected to be an increased enrollment with only 1 extra classroom? How will that handle what will ultimately be, perhaps 50 extra students and full-day K? I don't see how 3 extra classrooms actually gets you to the perceived goal, or to the stated goal.
Mr. Lewis?
I might need Dr. Martin to help with this a little bit, but generally speaking, the determination of exactly how the rooms will be used has not been made at this point. I think generally speaking, the art and music may share one room, and then right now we have one room that has 2 half-day kindergartens, so one room could be used to provide the other half-day kindergarten, and the other one for art and music, and then there's one left for capacity.
So one left for capacity to deal with potentially 50 extra students in the next 6 years. If the numbers are right, am I not reading that? Or 50, yeah, 50, and by 2023 and 24, the projection without change would be that Lucketts Elementary would be at 117% with, and I don't know how that, and over by 50 over current capacity, but I guess it would be slightly, the capacity will go up with the change, but still, I don't know how you necessarily can say that those 3 classroom spaces is going to handle your enrollment projections to the point where you would be able to guarantee full day K there.
I guess the easiest way to say is there's never any complete guarantees for everything, but one thing I'll remind you that this school is smaller in capacity, so there's less flexibility with enrollment issues. So in this case, you may have, more 2 first grade and second grades and 3 third grade and 4th grade. So as time goes on and these children progress through the school, those needs for the different grade levels will change over time, and so it won't be the same each time. So those combinations will change every single year, so that you never know exactly how that'll work out. In many of the cases, say, for example, if we have 50 third graders and we have a capacity of 23 each, so we're going to need 3 classrooms just for the third graders, but there's not a full classroom there. So that's how some of these things will work through there. So there is no, I can't say there's a guarantee, but we believe there's enough flexibility to make it work.
Mr. Hornberger.
Yeah, just a question for the committee. What's proposed is a 3 classroom addition. What is the number 3? Why did you fall on the number 3 in terms of classrooms? What was the thinking behind it? Because I looked through the material that's presented. I went through and read all the documents on this item as it came through the committee, and I haven't seen a clear rationale argument for the 3 classrooms. So I'm trying to understand that. I'm trying to pull together my own argument, whether it's for that or something different. But I was wondering what the committee's rationale for 3 classrooms and as they anticipated what that would provide.
Well, having 5 3-classroom additions already approved for our CIP, it made good sense for us to utilize one of those at Lucketts to resolve the issues that they're dealing with. So that I believe was the rationale with why we went with 3, is because we already have that lockdown. We have that funding, and it's really a matter at this point of us allocating that.
I don't believe we have the funding, but I just want to clarify that. We don't have funding for these projects if they're in the CIP. So they're in out years in the CIP, and then when they come forward to the first year of the CIP, the Board of Supervisors has to arrange for a funding mechanism for those. And what my understanding is the recommendation of the committee is that we move forward with the 3 classroom addition and then immediately at request use of fund balance to fund those rather than waiting on the CIP. So, but I guess so the rationale is because a 3 classroom addition, which actually was also stated, I think, at some point in the CIP as Dulles North and Dulles South. I think we broadened that out with the intention of full day kindergarten. That's the rationale. And my concern is, have we looked at other options? Have we considered other options? Because once you put in 3 classrooms there, that may mean other things are no longer on the table or would be on the table for consideration. And this process is unusual itself in the sense that we're having, I think this is what Ms. Rose is alluding to, although she's talking about the fund balance part, which is also unusual, that we review these expansions of schools in a vacuum, in the sense of in a committee of 3 people who get the facts, who get the information, get the benefit of interacting with staff, and then not in the CIP process, which is how we have historically done this kind of discussion. And so my concern is a process concern, because we're just now getting the CIP, and actually I'd ask you all to turn to page 101 in the CIP if you had a chance to read it, because it actually indicates how the classrooms are being allocated in calculation for program capacity, or actually now changing the word to base capacity. And the fact that we've heard many speakers say, and I've heard members of the committee say, we need a designated art and music room. But the reality is that doesn't actually trigger until, according to the standards, until the schools get significantly bigger, almost double the size. And even then you only have one designated music and art classroom, and it's mainly because you have so many kids and classrooms coming in to use those that it's hard to schedule it. So that's a huge part of this, and if you look at it, we have several schools, all those schools that are relatively small, I mean, under 500 plus students, are only get one art and music room, and it's a combination. So I can see the argument if the capacity of the school is such because of the numbers that we need a classroom because we don't have a designated art and music classroom. But then I'd start to look at trying to analyze where the total classrooms being used, and we haven't had the benefit of any of that analysis. And that's my concern, and we really haven't had time. I'm trying to pull up, even to the last minute, to try to understand what is the rationale associated with it. Is there any other way, and is this the best way to solve that problem, looking at the county as a whole? Because we all represent, yes, we represent our own districts, but we also represent the county at large. And so that's what I'm trying to do, and I'm understanding process. And the classroom issue, we have 14, according to page 101 in the CIP, which hasn't been presented yet, we have 14 regular-sized classrooms, and then we have one art and music, in theory, one art-music combination classroom and one special education classroom that gives a total capacity of 286. That's how we got the 286 number. And I also appreciate something that many of the speakers had said about how the capacities keep changing. And this has been a question I've had for many years, and we're moving toward a baseline approach, which is in the new CIP, but we haven't had a chance to review it or discuss it much as a board yet. So to me, I'm trying to add up the classrooms and say, what's the purpose? And how is this going to solve that problem? And I went ahead and posted online just today, and I gave a copy to all of you as well, just in things like some of the speakers may have reviewed it, my effort to try to understand what options are available to us as a board. And is this the best option? And what I figured out was, looking at the 4 options, if we look at the committee recommendation, which is just add 3 classrooms to the school, that's fine. That would enable the classroom in 2 years, because it takes time to construct it, to go to 88% capacity, up to 94% capacity over 5 years. So that sounds good. The problem is right next door we have a school, I mean, again, only 5-some miles apart, and that's when you look at the memo that's also posted on by staff, what the distance between the 2 schools are. I think last time we had a comment that you have to go to Maryland. It's not true. I've actually driven all 3 of these roads just this last week to try to understand what are we talking about? How difficult is this? And so I feel like there's a lot of information, and we as a board have not had an opportunity to process that information. And part of it is a process problem, because we've never used a committee to recommend something and then bring it to the full board, and within 2 weeks of it being proposed, then we have to answer it. And so I'm still scrambling to try to get what is the need, what is the best solution to solve the problem that we have, that is also an equitable solution for the Lucketts community and for all other communities. And so that's why I feel like this is almost premature. And I'm wondering from the staff perspective, what is the timeline? Do we have to make a decision right now, or can board members actually review the CIP and the context of this discussion in a broader context?
Dr. Williams, did you want to speak to this?
Mr. Hornberger, is your question regarding, your question is pertaining to specifically just the CIP, since that's this agenda item, as opposed to fund balance?
Correct.
So the board is scheduled to make a decision regarding the approval. So the proposed CIP is being presented tonight, and then at the meeting at the end of November, the last board meeting in November, is when the school board is scheduled to approve the CIP. So a decision regarding inclusion, regarding identifying Lucketts, were it to be identified in this particular CIP, would need to be by that time. However, absent a decision on the board on that effect, there's not a plan by staff to identify which 5 schools would host the classroom additions. But if it were the intent to designate that as part of the CIP process, that decision would need to be made prior to the board vote at the second meeting in November. Mr. Lewis, am I remembering correct me if I've got the date wrong?
That's correct.
Okay.
So in order, we would need to modify the CIP by the end of November. And that's our target date. But we haven't even had it proposed yet. It's being proposed this evening. So in terms of modifying the CIP, we would seem to have more time to be able to look at this discussion in context of others, because we're now starting to make a decision to take one of the 3 classroom additions from the CIP and allocate it without having to look at what, and having had a view of what is the broader situation that's going on in terms of those. Is there a place that needs 3, 2, 1, a difference than just 3? And then the second question, and I know it's follow on this, but is there a reason for the fund balance request that we would need to adopt this action in the CIP prior in order to get the opportunity of fund balance request?
Not from staff's perspective.
And I'll speak in on this. During the discussion on the agenda, I asked this to be placed prior to the discussion on the CIP. The question I think that you should be asking is not when is the CIP decision going to be made necessarily, but well, there is a second question. That is, when is fund balance ideas to be submitted up to the Board of Supervisors, because we want to hit that timeline as well.
Right. And my understanding is no, there's not. In terms of, it's not until after the CIP is adopted that would be an issue. Maybe I'm wrong, and staff correct me if I'm wrong. Is it possible to discuss this in the context of the full CIP and still be able to avail potentially of fund balance in order to be able to expedite this or any other project that the school board chooses?
Mr. Lewis.
Confirming the timeline for the CIP is definitely in November, but I might need Ms. Burden's help on the timing of the fund balance request, because I believe that's more urgent. I think that's due this time of year to get the fund balance request on the docket for the supervisor.
So, Ms. Burden, the question to you is, do we have a deadline by which to submit our request for fund balance funding?
Yes. Historically, they begin their review in the first November. Now, that's not when they allocate the funds, but that's when they begin their discussions, and I guess that's when they are provided a list of items from both county government and the school system. So historically, we bring our fund balance request to you all at the first October meeting as information, and then at the second October meeting for action.
Okay, so that's why it's coming at the same time.
Dr. Williams?
Yes, I'd just like to reiterate a couple things Ms. Burden said. So, County Administrator asked that it be brought by the end of October. They're scheduled to take this up at their first meeting in November. Ms. Burden, do you know when they're scheduled to take action on it?
No. Historically, they have taken action sometimes in December, sometimes mostly in January, though. I think the holiday schedule kind of...
So what I'm pointing out is the county administrator has asked that we provide any fund balance request by the end of October, because he would like to bring that to the Board of Supervisors when they initiate conversation about staff recommendations. But I'm just pointing out that they're not taking action immediately.
So with regard to process and premature and these kinds of things, I want to be clear that this conversation began during last year's CIP process, where I proposed a 3-classroom addition to Lucketts, and it was recommended that it go to committee. And since that time, literally over a year, the committee has worked on it. Mr. Hornberger, you yourself have participated in those meetings. In fact, you sent me analysis in July on Lucketts specifically, and then additionally today we received additional analysis, which leads me to believe that you do understand that we have thoroughly explored all options, from rezoning to modular classrooms, which is where the conversation began. But frankly, at the end of the day, the committee voted unanimously because an $800,000 investment in modular classrooms wouldn't make sense when we can make a permanent fix. We can permanently fix this problem in Lucketts for $3.1 million, and it's that important. And so this is not premature. This has been well thought out with staff, with board members, and in the public. And I've been pretty vocal about it. I've created several videos and things on social media, and so I've been pretty transparent about the entire process.
Mr. Hornberger?
Just a quick comment, because Mr. Chairman, it was raised a point. Actually, my email was in response to a question from another board member. When I attended the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting, it was not about this topic. It was about another topic. So no, I had not participated in the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting on this topic. And when this issue did come up, it came up on the last day that the board was adopting its CIP last year as three trailers being assigned to Lucketts Elementary, with no prior discussion prior to that. So actually, before the school board, the first time that this has been discussed as a board has been 2 weeks ago.
As a member of the Finance and Facilities Committee, as I look at the options available on the table, one thing that comes up is the discussion on the rezoning. An issue that we have is that if you look at the current numbers and you multiply the current enrollment and the projected enrollment by 15%, what you discover is that that number is actually less than the number of students that would be in the CL52 zone that one of the plans has moving out. What that means to me is that we would be required to have a full-blown boundary hearing for this one effort. And to me, that is a huge emotional and financial burden on the school system to get that rolling and to get involved in that again. It makes me worry about trying to adjust a small school with such a small population, knowing that a three-classroom solution would get us, we believe, may answer all of the needs, even if they consolidate the art and the music room into one. That would enable 2 classrooms to remain with 23 students per classroom, 46 additional seats. That certainly would give them a lot of flexibility as they move out. So we're looking at that solution and we're saying, what happens if they grow more? Well, we can also look at the fact that Central Loudoun is going to have a new school. ES24 is scheduled to open in 2024. And that happens to be about the time frame when we think Lucketts might be hitting their maximum capacity. We can't promise the Lucketts community that they won't eventually have to rezone, because that's the nature of growth. We have growth in that area. We have growth all over the county. And that's just something that we have to accept. But what we can do is look at the potential solutions, of which we did spend quite a bit of time in the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting going over the options, what it meant in the short term, what it meant in the longer term, and whether they were viable. So we ruled out the trailers because these are likely to be there quite a while, and the trailers are not the facility that we want to use for longer term solutions for our students. So there is, beyond a doubt, that this becomes a capacity question, which is one of those issues that is not cosmetic. It's not trying to make the school pretty. It's not bumping them up on a prioritization list. It is simply identifying a capacity issue right away, and the community seems perfectly willing to wait that one more year on the full-day kindergarten in order to bring in the 3 classroom solution. So I'm inclined to support the request to have the 3 classroom solution, and also to add this onto the funding request back to the Board of Supervisors. Ms. Rose.
I think what you just said actually kind of highlights for me some of the process problems, is that when you say the committee dealt with, the rezoning implications, the committee dealt with the capacity issues, the committee dealt with all and I didn't. I feel like that is something that has historically been, all of those things are historically done through CIP and rezoning, not in a committee. And so it's just brought to us and said, here, we've spent 11 months on it, trust us, here it is. But every boundary process I've dealt with so far has really, it's labor intensive, and it requires, I guess everybody gets to decide how they handle those themselves, but I often go out and drive the areas, walk the areas, go through the areas, and in this time, I'm not able to really get a physical handle on some of the questions that are being posed in terms of driving routes and bus routes and things like that. So I think that is, so if my frustration is centered squarely on process in this, and I don't think this is the right process. I think this has taken a lot of what should be a discussion at the full board out of the full board and put it on a artificial timeline that if it really was that information about the Board of Supervisors timeline should have been included here, should have been part of this, like this is why we're doing this now. because it was requested at this date. I feel like it's like bits of information, bit of information, bit of information, and I'm pulling it all together trying to make the best decision. I am concerned in terms of the action. I am not in doubt that the school needs these things. I do not doubt that there's definite need there, as with all of our older facilities. As I had looked at my community and in my area, and I said, look, I know that you guys have come and they came here and they did a huge campaign for Meadowland, really, talking about the real structural needs there, capacity needs there, and equity issues there. And I said, yes, I know. And you know what? The proper place for that discussion is in the CIP, and that's starting this fall. And I looked at them and I said, we're going to go. Well, I'll be walking with you guys through that process in the fall. And that was, we were talking about this all through. They missed the boat on the CIP discussion. They came to us kind of after it had already closed last year. But I said, we're going to work on it through the fall. We're going to, prioritize, our projects, and I hope to, advocate for your needs inside of that process. But I advocated for the process. So it's not that I don't disagree that you need those improvements. I just disagree with how this process played out. The other thing is, I do want to just address some of the comment that I keep hearing about the equity issues in terms of coding. I want everyone to understand that the Meadowland coding process was something that principal went out and worked really, really, really hard to get funding from an outside source. Yes, there's some LCPS dollars, but it is by far not the driving funding factor for that program. That is something that principal did an extraordinary job of identifying an opportunity and taking advantage of it, and kudos to him. That's amazing. So I just want to make sure that is very clear on that funding. And that's the other thing. I'm still confused. I still don't know what I'm going to do here, because I want to support the needs. I'm not sure that what we have on the table actually solves the problem in the long run, and I'm still concerned about the process issues and the other options that might be available to solve those. So I'm still confused.
So there was an opportunity, as Mr. DeKenneth mentioned, last year. We were looking at a problem. That problem needed resolution. That problem was sent to the Finance and Facilities Committee. The committee is making a recommendation now. A lot of members have been out to the school to take a look, because it's been an ongoing issue, to try to grasp the complexities of the problem. As you look at this and you realize that there are two different questions here. The first question is, does the school need a solution? Well, there are three. Does the school need a solution? Is the three-classroom solution the right one? And should it be placed on the CIP? Ms. Rose, I think, is identifying the CIP as a procedural issue. And I understand her point. I think that's a very valid point. When you look at the CIP, where should this solution fall out on the CIP? At this point, we're talking about whether that three-classroom solution is the right solution. And for this solution, and after the amount of time the Finance and Facilities Committee has spent on it, I believe it is. Additional comments? Mr. Hornberger.
Yeah, couple questions or couple issues here. And again, I posted this online this afternoon after I got information this afternoon from staff, because I was still trying to get information to find out what will be the capacity of the school when we add 3 classrooms. And I got one answer at one point, and then just today that answer changed. And because nowhere in any of the documents did it tell me what the capacity of the school would be once even in committee or in front of us, what the capacity of the school will be when we build 3 classrooms, and how that fits within the projection of the school. So this is my effort to do that. I used the 50 number, which is the one staff had indicated in this memo that the board also has, and it's posted online. Understanding that our policy is a 15% to solve the problem of full-day kindergarten, a 15% maximum. That would be a difference of 3 students from 50. It's 47. So, and that is something the way the policy is written, it says if that would solve the problem of full-day kindergarten, then it can be used, and then the board would look at that issue. And so, when I actually tease that out and I look down at like scenario 3, and this is why I asked about how many classrooms do we need. If you look at scenario 3, the base capacity of the school would be 309 with 1 classroom. That's 286 according to the standard here. that would be plus 23, which is the number for one additional classroom. That goes to 309. When I run that against the projection information, that again is contained in here or in a memo, that because I asked for that information, not because we ever saw it anywhere in committee documentation, you find what the capacities or what the projections are of the school. When you do that in scenario 3, for example, with just adding one classroom rather than 3, with a rezoning, and I'll talk about that in a second, if you were only to take 40 kids out, you'd be in 5 years, according to projections, at 95% capacity at the school. Now, as you noted, Mr. Morse, and again, we see this in the CIP, that very next year is when a new school in Leesburg is slated to open. So it provides an opportunity, if we have a problem, if there's growth, to solve it. So what I'm saying is, rather than simply say, let's add 3 classrooms to a school because that's what we had said, we're going to do 3 classroom additions on schools, I'm trying to figure out what is the most responsible thing to meet the need. And in reality, I think, actually, as I look at this and I hear the discussion, a 1 classroom addition with the rezoning, and again, fewer than 50 students, whatever fits within the thing, we haven't even gone through a process to look at that, actually statistically would do the trick. It would solve that problem. And there's been questions about, well, staff said, you can't solve the problem with rezoning. You can they said that in this memo, you can do full day kindergarten with rezoning. The issue is, can you do full day kindergarten and a designated music and art room? Well, no, because now you're talking about 3 classrooms. But again, according to our standard, schools of that size don't get designated classrooms of art and music. And so we're changing the standard in the process of proposing it for 1 school. So, this is where it gets really hard, because I'm trying to look at the numbers so that I can go back to my constituents, to other people, and say, hey, we chose to do this in this instance because the data aligned with it, rather than, well, because we had said we were going to do 3 classroom additions on schools and we picked Lucketts to do one of them, maybe something fewer than 3 classrooms would have worked to meet that need. And that's my effort, to try to figure out what is it and how can we solve it. There's been questions or issues raised about Route 15. If you look at the staff's memo on this item, Route 15, the way to avoid Route 15 for some students is to rezone them to Waterford, because the transportation routes are such that it actually gets them off of Route 15. Now, they would only be from Stumptown Road to Lucketts, a very small, through the intersection. But the reality is that's why I was asking, what options are available? Is it more difficult? Would it increase travel time? No, staff say basically their thought is no, it probably wouldn't. In fact, right now our buses run from Waterford up 2 of these roads and then turn around in the Lucketts attendance zone and head back. And the same thing happens with some of these roads for the Lucketts buses. They go up and then they turn around in the Waterford attendance zone. So I think that there just needs to be more consideration given to some of these other options, and especially given the fact, and if you look at the CIP, Waterford is at 57% capacity next year, and in 5 years it only goes to 66% capacity. So there's available capacity. The board passed a motion or an amendment to its policy just recently that said, hey, if we can rezone to solve the problem of full-day kindergarten, then then that's a consideration. That's something we can look at. And yet we're not really looking at it in this instance, and even staff are telling us, and as they made a recommendation to the committee in option 1 and 2, the option of rezoning came up. So they obviously thought that could work. So, this is where I'm trying to, I feel like we're get 3 classrooms, because that's what's on the CIP, rather than, is this really the best way approach? Is a hybrid approach a better approach, where we do some rezoning and we do some classroom additions? That's my concern.
Ms. Maloney.
I'd like to clarify the motion said that should we decide to use fund balance, or the land board of supervisors decides to use fund balance, that the 5 classroom additions would still remain 5. How does that work budget-wise? Usually I thought when we're using fund balance to pay for something, we're taking money out of the bucket that it's coming out from.
Dr. Williams?
Ms. Burden, if you can address that. You may have understood the question.
No, I did not understand the question. I was going to ask if she could repeat.
I was hoping you did, but...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll try again. So the 5 classroom additions are in the CIP, and you're saying the 5 3-classroom additions are in the CIP now. What you're saying is that if this motion is approved as is, and then it goes before the Board of Supervisors and they approve it via fund balance, to be paid for via fund balance, that there will still be 5 classroom additions, not 4, that will be included in the CIP.
And Mr. DeKennep my understanding of the intent of the motion is that there would still be 5 and that Lucketts would no longer be one of the 5. That's my understanding of the intent of the motion. Should the fund balance request be approved?
So the fund balance request would be for an additional expense that we are no longer seeing any sort of decrease in our CIP because of it. We're not seeing a decrease in our operational budget because of it. It's just an extra project that we'd be taking on.
That's correct. And so to respond to Dr. Williams' question and yours, Ms. Maloney, county staff has worked with our staff and had conversations about this and how it would work. And it was, they thought it was best that we take this approach for this project because of its need. I also had a few additional comments when you're finished.
Mr. DeKennep.
So I kind of wanted to go back to a few of Mr. Hornberger's comments. You know, at the end of the day, rezoning is going to create another small school in Leesburg. It's going to result in a net loss in resources, further compounding the issues that the school is already dealing with. And the idea that this is new and you know, that we're just finding out about it is false. And I have an email from you, Mr. Hornberger, to myself on June 28th.
Yeah, Mr. DeKennep, we need to keep the discussion about the topic and not about board members.
Okay. So I'm writing to follow up on our brief conversation regarding options for addressing Lucketts Elementary School concerns. I've copied Tom and Beth on this email since it also affects their constituencies. As I mentioned briefly last night, I do not believe that dramatically expanding Lucketts Elementary School is a reasonable alternative to the future construction of another elementary school in Leesburg, proffer site at Tuscarora Crossing, as I believe is also the perspective of staff. Below is my rationale.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. This is reading an email of another board member is not good parliamentary procedure protocol.
That's correct. Mr. DeKennep, I'd ask you to speak to the topic and not read the email.
Okay. So with regard to the topic, this 6, 7, 8 paragraph with 15 links email clearly indicates that this is well thought out and that there's a predetermined outcome on your behalf, Mr. Hornberger.
Okay. Are there additional productive comments on the matter? Okay. Seeing none, let's put this to the vote. All those in favor of the motion to add a 3-classroom addition to Lucketts, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. All those opposed? That motion will carry 6-2-0-1 with Ms. Rose, Mr. Hornberger opposed, and with Ms. Turgeon absent for the vote. On to action item 8.03, Finance and Facilities Committee FY 2017 fund balance request, Mr. DeKennep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the Loudoun County School Board request supplemental funding from the Board of Supervisors fiscal year 2017 fund balance in an amount of up to $7 million. This request is associated with staff priority items below and includes Lucketts Elementary classroom additions and Lucketts wastewater treatment plant as noted.
Second.
A motion seconded by Mr. Marshall. Mr. DeKennep.
So based upon information from Loudoun County, LCPS may have the opportunity to access a portion of year-end funds this year. At this time, the total amount of year-end funds is unknown. The items below reflect current needs that could be accelerated slightly if funding were provided early. With regard to the Lucketts Elementary School classroom additions, we're requesting funding of up to $3.1 million, and this will address several capacity issues and other issues that we've identified. That includes overcapacity, inability to expand full-day kindergarten, no dedicated art or music room, the only school in the county to have so, and to alleviate having to bus criteria-eligible full-day kindergarten students that are currently being transported to Balls Bluff Elementary School. The CIP calls for these additions to current CIP, based on our previous vote, calls for these additions to be in place in school year 22-23, and this project would provide much needed relief. If the project were funded out of this year's fund balance, the new classrooms would likely be available for the opening school year of 2019-2020. With regard to the wastewater treatment plant, it should also be noted that the fiscal year 18 CIP includes a project to replace the wastewater treatment plant that serves not only Lucketts, but the community center and the fire station, and a new fire station that's under construction. The wastewater treatment facility is currently planned to be online in the fall of 2021. And so the idea here with consolidating these projects is essentially construction projects at schools are often very disruptive. And the idea here is to correlate the projects together to minimize any disruption on campus so as these two projects could be conducted simultaneously. Thank you.
Further comments? Ms. Rose.
Yes, I have questions now for staff in terms of, as we have done in the past, when we request fund balance, there's been an opportunity for staff to provide us with a list of things, books, technology, buses, other things. Are there any of those items this year that we would like to request out of fund balance that may have, other priorities of the staff for other educational needs that we may have?
Dr. Williams?
So in terms of fund balance, it has been somewhat of a challenge the last few years to translate general comments from the Board of Supervisors regarding what they would consider in terms of approving to identifying particular projects that would be well received. Some of the items that have previously been identified by staff and approved by the school board as a fund balance request were not well received, and so this year, based on communication with a county administrator, and once the interest of and once discussions regarding Lucketts occurred, staff identified that as an option. We have not identified other topics that we think other funding options that we think and have confidence would be well received by the Board of Supervisors.
So, because I feel like we are discussing the CIP prior to it being introduced, this is where I'm getting frustrated with this conversation because I don't know if there's anything. I haven't had a chance to really digest the CIP since I just got it. Are there any, I think that in the past they've been amenable, I know they were not amenable to books and other operational items, but buses have been, something they've been favorable to, and other construction projects. But do we have any other construction projects that are on that would be something that we would want to, as a board, consider?
So, in terms of the CIP, I would note that I'll ask Mr. Lewis, is this the second year in which we've provided the CIP earlier, or third?
This is the second.
So I'll note that the timing of fund balance is similar to what it's been in previous years, but CIP is actually earlier for the second year in a row in order to accommodate a to give the option of a joint meeting with the supervisors in December. And so I just want to comment in terms of the timing of your receipt of the CIP is it's actually earlier than it's historically been. To answer the question regarding construction projects, I mean, I can ask Mr. Lewis or Ms. Burden if they have any other insights in terms of possible requests.
I'm just saying, my point is not necessarily that this is bad timing of getting this document. I'm just saying it's difficult to have this discussion on the proposals on the table because we get the CIP, which impacts how you view the previous two items on our agenda in terms of capacity and fund balance. It's like this is all a pre-done conclusion of which I've not been an active participant other than this. It's going to happen, but it's backwards how we're doing this, and I think that I just remain frustrated with how this is backwards. After this, we're going to get a presentation on our CIP and the projects that may have impacted how we had a discussion on the previous two agenda items
but we're not going to have it in that order. We're having it backwards.
Mr. Marshall.
Oh, not me. Oh, sorry.
Mr. DeKennett.
Mr. Lewis, if you can remind me last year with the Board of Supervisors fund balance, how those funds were spent?
I don't have that with me. I can't remember.
do.
Burden?
The process that we followed this year is exactly the same as last year.
Oh, okay.
It came through the Finance and Facilities Committee. At the first meeting in October, it was presented as an information item to the school board and an action item at the end of October. We requested a little over $7 million, buses and turf projects and some textbook dollars, I believe, but around $7 million, a similar dollar amount that we're requesting this year. As Dr. Williams indicated, items that historically appear in our operating budget and make up part of that request, like textbooks, perhaps some technology, have not been well received. Buses are now fully funded in the CIP for from the Board of Supervisors, so there are now no buses in the school operating fund for fiscal 19, nor do we have any need to request them as part of the fund balance. The turf fields that we requested as part of the fund balance last year, I think we requested...
I think it was 4.
4 in the CIP, and then we only requested 2, I think, as part of the fund balance request. 2 were funded, and then the other 2 were left as part of the CIP.
Thank you, Ms. Burden. And my point for that question was that, you know, I was the one that advocated to buy textbooks before turf fields last year. And though it's an operational cost, it made sense. The reality is I recall certain school board members speaking at the Board of Supervisors last year advocating for year-end funds to be spent on turf fields. And folks, I'm asking for classrooms to teach kids, not turf fields, okay? That's what I'm asking for, and I don't think that is a huge ask at this point.
Additional comments? Mr. Hornberg.
I just have a question for staff related to the water treatment plant. Because when I read the documentation, it seemed that because we did 3, at least according to what's posted online, because of doing 3 classroom addition is what precipitated the need to have the water treatment plant. 2 wouldn't have. Can you clarify me now that we did 3? Is that the reason why we're advancing the water treatment plant as well?
No, sir. The item tonight says that the water treatment plant is not triggered by the 3 classroom addition. The information we had earlier on that we were proposing that it may trigger that because we hadn't had time to get with our engineering firm to talk about that. So at this point, the advice from an engineering firm is the classroom addition would not trigger it. What we're saying is we would propose that it be coupled together because it'd be less disruption on the site. So we'll be having 2 consecutive construction projects on the site.
Right, and this item is what 2 years out in the CIP anyway. So, and again, this is not. I mean, this is one of those joint facility pieces because the county also has an interest in the water treatment plant. So, I mean, but it does make sense to do it all at the same time. The only concern, of course, when the school board requests money for a project that's a joint money, it's not for a joint benefit. It's not always recognized as a joint benefit. It's recognized as a want from us. But at least this one is something that serves the whole, serves both county and school needs. But it seems less disruptive to the school campus to do it simultaneously. And so if we're moving forward, that makes sense. The other thing is, while part of the request was not identified specifically in the CIP. The other one is, and so this is replacing that item in the CIP to answer one of my colleagues' questions earlier. So I think that makes sense as well. I mean, and if county staff and our staff have discussed this and believe that it has a chance of being well received, then I think it does make sense.
Additional comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to place the 3 classroom addition at Lucketts on the fund balance request for 2017, FY 2017, say aye, raise your hand. Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries unanimously of board members present, with Ms. Turgeon absent for the vote. Board members, I'd like to take a 10-minute recess.